What first began as a joke drawing from the early 80s would turn into an international sensation, and spawn a plethora of new adaptations on many platforms. Let's examine some of the intricacies within their multiverse. This is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Iceberg.
Surf's up in the city.
Damn! In the first TMNT movie, Raphael screams, "Damn!" in a very dramatic manner and loud voice. Despite being a bit of a serious scene, it quickly became a very popular joke within fandom because of how funny the delivery of the line was. Another reason for it becoming famous is the fact that the line had to be cut from TV airings because of the fact that it counts as cussing for PG audiences. Ultimately, it's considered one of the reasons as to why the next movies were a bit less serious and more comedic, so that another damn moment is avoided and no cuts have to be made for the TV airings. Banned pickle ad. When you think about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you think about the colorful turtles, some comedy, some heart, and a whole lot of action. However, expectations are sometimes subverted, and that's what leads us to this banned German TMNT advertisement. The advert shows a bunch of people inside a locker room when Raphael comes into the room and slowly removes his towel. Of course, we're spared the view of what comes once the towel is fully gone, but we're quickly shown a bunch of pickles right away, which is what the ad was about the whole time. So if you didn't get it already, it's implied that the pickles are Raphael's... yeah. Named after Renaissance artists. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are each named after a famous Renaissance artist, which were, and still are, incredibly famous for their art. First off, we have Leonardo, who is named after Leonardo da Vinci, and Raphael, who is named after Raffaello Sanzio da Urbino, Donatello, who is named after Donato di Niccolò di Beto Bardi, and finally we have Michelangelo, who is named after Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni. All four of them left a major mark in history, and it's nice to see TMNT honor their memory. Donatello was almost called Botticelli at one point, but ultimately was changed. Additionally, the 1987 TMNT cartoon series had an episode called Leonardo the Renaissance Turtle, which directly refers to this fact. A lesser known fact is that Venus de Milo, a female turtle that exists in a few versions of the TMNT franchise, is named after an ancient statue that is believed to be a depiction of Aphrodite, the Greek goddess. Insane in the Membrane banned. It's not every day that you hear about a cartoon episode from a show meant for children getting banned because it was too graphic. Sure, a Pokemon episode was banned in the past because of the fact that it had too many, as one of the characters, Stockman, has a body that begins to deteriorate in a manner that can be called body horror. On top of that, there's even a scene where April breaks the character's jaw, similar to how Veronica from The Fly breaks Blunderfly's jaw, which eventually leads to his full transformation. The irony of TMNT. This goes without saying, but let's just wait a minute to remember the fact that turtles are in fact slow creatures in real life, making them quick ninjas who, when they want, travel so quickly and silently that they can barely be seen at all. Well, at least the silent part is consistent between real turtles and the teenage ninjas, but that's just the basics. There is a tragedy in the irony of the Teenage Turtles, and it's that in real life, turtles cannot eat pizzas, and it's incredibly unhealthy for them. They cannot digest dairy products, and they become ill if they are fed anything with things like cheese, yogurt, or milk in them. So only turtles who have mutated with toxic goo and live in a fictional world can enjoy pizza, not those we have in real life. Let's say prayers for every turtle who is fed pizza by innocent children who had no idea they're harming the poor animals. Crossover with Batman. TMNT is one of the most successful franchises in recent history, and it's no surprise that they have been part of many crossovers over time. But one crossover that you may not expect to see is the Batman and TMNT 6-issue comic book miniseries that put these characters together. And later on, this was adapted into a direct-to-video animated movie in 2019 as well, which was surprisingly fun to watch. This was further expanded when you count the fact that there was a TMNT crossover in the Injustice 2 video game as well, and the Versus dialogue with Batman even references the miniseries at times. It is a bit of a bizarre crossover for sure, but definitely not the strangest one when we have other crossovers like the TMNT vs Cobra Kai action figures that come bundled with one opponent for each of the turtles, complete with karate outfits for the boys. The Lovable Aliens. When Michael Bay was given the opportunity to produce the reboot of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie franchise, he originally wanted to make the turtles, quote, lovable aliens, rather than the usual Earth turtles that are simply mutated due to some toxic waste falling on them. This caused fans of the characters to raise their voices, and this reached a point where Michael Bay simply accepted defeat and reassured fans that he won't be making aliens and will instead stick to making them turtles. This hardly did much at the end of the day, as the movies failed to win over fans of the franchise anyway, and just appealed to the blockbuster crowd, which is expected of something made by Michael Bay. Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. When the very first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came to UK audiences back in the 90s, audiences were confused by the title of the movie, because their TMNT was in fact called Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles in the UK when the cartoon series was first introduced. The reason behind this odd change was the fact that the British government was strictly against violence in children's television, and the series was already in hot water given the fact that it included ninjas, nunchucks, and even swords. Thus, the series was made to replace ninja with hero in the title, and this was represented in everything from the theme song lyrics to the box art of the video games. Since the movies weren't necessarily aired on screens that children exclusively watched movies on, they were allowed to keep the ninja in the name. However, the British government was strict in other ways, as certain scenes in the second movie, The Secret of the Ooze, were edited out. Lastly, the UK wasn't the only place that had hero turtles, as other countries like Austria, Germany, Norway, and Belgium saw that name as well when the cartoon series first aired. The Last Ronin. The franchise has had a bunch of grim future stories throughout the time, especially when you take the 2003 animated show into account, which had a series of episodes in which every turtle sees a bad dream of what a terrible future for them could be. But none of them can be close to The Last Ronin, which is a 5-issue miniseries that shows an alternate bad future in which all the turtles aside from Michelangelo are dead due to an extermination mission launched by the Foot Clan. Thus, he embarks on a mission to avenge his fallen family and to also rid the world of this incredibly dangerous version of the Foot Clan that has grown powerful beyond measure. Of course, he's no longer the cheerful turtle that we all know, and he keeps the weapons of his fallen brothers with him, adding them to his arsenal. This dark story that ends with the death of the protagonist is not an easy pill to swallow. It also has a director's cut that includes some extra panels, not recommended for your children this Christmas. Started as a joke. The franchise actually started off as a joke between two friends. Within Mirage Studios in 1983, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird were working on a comic for their job when, for some reason, Kevin drew a random, masked, nunchuck-wielding Ninja Turtle. When he showed it to Laird, both of them laughed at how absurd the concept is. Then Peter made a better one, and then Kevin felt the need to top his sketch and ended up making one too. The quality of these joke sketches eventually became better, and Kevin drew 4 of these turtles standing together in a dramatic pose. It was drawn by pencil, and then Peter inked it, and they both realized that they had an interesting concept on hand. Eventually, what they thought was the dumbest thing ever ended up being their next comic, and they saw unparalleled success, as we all know. The arcade game. Licensed video games have usually just been a quick cash grab, and they're not very memorable at the end of the day outside of personal nostalgia. However, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles beat-em-up game that came out in 1989 is one of the most significantly remembered arcade games of all time. As soon as it was released, it became the highest-grossing dedicated arcade game of 1990 in the US, and Konami's highest-grossing video game at the time. It saw great success in every country, and fans had to wait in line to get a chance to play it, even though most versions of it featured 4-player co-op multiplayer. Eventually, the game was ported to home systems such as the NES and found great success there as well, both critically and financially. Even when the game was released on the Xbox Live Arcade, it had sold nearly 1 million units by 2011. Aside from receiving many sequels, the game continues to be the golden standard for TMNT games, as even the recent Shredder's Revenge game that came out this year is heavily inspired by the arcade game and almost feels like a modern-day sequel. Pepperoni for all. The Turtles are known for their love of pizza above all else. They can't spend a single day without mentioning or eating pizza, and it's what they consider the best thing in their life. They do eat other things and even make seemingly healthy tea and whatnot, but all of this goes out the window when they eat pizza, and that's how much they love it. However, almost every single depiction of them eating pizza in official media, no matter what the medium, is pepperoni pizza. It's unknown if it's an unspoken rule or an actual mandatory guideline given to every artist, but the Turtles don't seem to like any other type of pizza, despite the food being a major part of their identity. The only notable depiction of the Turtles eating a non-pepperoni pizza was in the Michael Bay movies. Internal crossovers. We've spoken about crossovers with other properties, but TMNT is such a long-running franchise that it essentially has crossovers with itself too. Notable examples include Turtles Forever, which has the Turtles from the 2003 animated series meet up with the Turtles from the 1987 animated series, which establishes that both of them are from alternate dimensions, and they eventually meet the Turtles from the Mirage comics as well. And all go their own way eventually, but not before the audience is shown a computer screen that displays a kind of multiverse that has examples like the 2007 CGI Turtles movie. Then we have the 2012 animated series that did the same thing by having the version of the characters crossover from the 1987 series with a similar plot and appearances, such as the Mirage comic version of the Turtles coming around as well. Donatello's disappointment. In the second live-action movie, The Secret of the Ooze, Donatello is shown to believe that his family is special in some way, and that what happened to them was not an accident. However, he finds out that the ooze was just made accidentally and not something that was specifically tailored to mutate them. So that makes him think that they are not special anymore for the time being. However, when you think about it, the real message here is the fact that random chemical garbage made them turn into sentient humanoid warriors is what makes them special. Because you would think being exposed to toxic waste would harm a living creature instead of the Spider-Man effect giving them unrealistic superpowers. Other food matters too. The Turtles are inseparable from pizza, and even an earlier part of the iceberg delves into the topic. However, throughout the decades of the character's existence, the Turtles do have other foods that they individually like as well. Leo's favorite food is sushi, Raphael's favorite food is cereal, Donatello's favorite food is hamburgers, and Mikey's favorite food is, well, it's still pizza. Splinter has a favorite food as well, which is cake. And at the end of the day, all of them do love pizza a lot, and their favorite foods are not usually shown all that much. But in a rare example, the Turtles movie game on the Game Boy Advance has the Turtles healed by their favorite foods rather than just pizza. obsession with xenomorphs. For some reason, the Turtles franchise has seen several references to the Alien franchise in the form of creatures that are not aliens, but do have the shape of a xenomorph either way. The first example takes us to an episode of the 1987 show called The Case of the Killer Pizzas, in which pizza monsters have elongated skulls and bodies similar to the xenomorph. Then we have similar monsters showing up in the video games, such as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Back from the Sewers, Turtles in Time, and the Hyperstone Heist. Lastly, the 2012 animated show has the Squirrelanoids, who are a pack of mutants that originated from when a squirrel discovered a split canister of mutagen. The squirrel then found a homeless man and went inside his stomach, where it divided itself into two squirrels. This process eventually takes us towards a transformation, which makes the creature monstrous, and they start to resemble the xenomorph in the end, with a second hidden mouth within its first one. It's certainly no coincidence that the franchise often ends up using the xenomorph as an inspiration from time to time, especially since one of the previously mentioned episodes is very similar to the horror movie The Fly. A rift between friends. The 1987 cartoon series of the Turtles was a bit on the family-friendly side due to the fact that it was the best business decision for the time, and the creators collaborated with this too without much protest. However, Laird drew the line at The Next Mutation, which was a live-action adaptation created for children, and it ended up incorporating a female turtle called Venus de Milo. Unlike Laird, however, Kevin Eastman was fine with the character, and even went as far as to say that he liked her. In the past, Peter Laird ended up purchasing the franchise and banned Venus de Milo from ever making an appearance again due to his hatred of the character. But once Nickelodeon purchased the franchise, the character finally came back to the IDW continuity. What could have been? Over the years, several turtle-related projects never came to be. Firstly, we have the two TV shows that were pitched in 2001. One of them would have featured a teenage Casey and April together, while the other was going to be a CGI show that used motion capture. Secondly, we have an alternate universe prequel that was pitched, which would have focused on the origins of the Foot Clan. Lastly, there's a cancelled spin-off of the 1987 cartoon show that was going to be based on the Mighty Mutanimals. This project went pretty far in planning as story elements and an animation bible was created, complete with character designs. Fan theories. Since the Turtles are such a long-running franchise, there are thousands of fan theories, but they mostly apply to specific adaptations of the characters since there are so many different continuities, canon and otherwise. However, some theories do stand out, such as the hilarious theory that the Chipmunk and the Chipettes from the Alvin and the Chipmunks franchise are mutated chipmunks in the same way that the Turtles were mutated, and they both take place in the same universe. Another theory believes that the main turtle characters represent the 7 deadly sins. Michelangelo is orange, which represents gluttony, and it fits because he is the most pizza-obsessed turtle out of them all. Raphael is red, which represents anger, and this fits pretty well as well since he's a bit of a hot-headed guy. Donatello is purple, and therefore pride, which can fit since he does take a pride in his knowledge of machines and technology. Then we have Leonardo, who is blue, and supposedly represents sloth because a lot of times he just leaves the team because he thinks he's not worthy of leading them and just goes away to lazily meditate until he builds up the courage again. April is yellow and thus greed, which only applies to the 80s show since she was quite desperate for a good news scoop in that show, and she actively put her crew in harm in the process. Irma is light blue and represents lust, since she awaits the day when a handsome guy would find her and sweep her off her feet. And then lastly, Shredder is jealousy. Although he does not wear the color green, but his backstory in general does point out jealousy, since he kills Hamato Yoshi and his lover for spurning him. Like and subscribe to see more videos like this, and let us know what topics we should cover next. And last but not least, a huge shout out and thank you to the channel members that make this possible. Maker out.